we'll do it that way. All right, recording now. All right, let me let somebody else just arrived. Well, okay, what does it say? It says 5 people are waiting. Who is this? Who is this person? Okay, I'm gonna admit everybody because I don't know who that is. All right. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Good.
Good.
Great. Thank you for arriving early and participating in our endorsement process. And just to sort of give you an overview, I think you saw the email. We're going to start with an opening statement. Then we're going to do the questions. And I think if you guys, let me see if we can mute. If you could mute yourselves, that would be great. Yep. Jan, if you could mute yourself, that would be great. We're going to do the 2 sets of questions, and then we're going to do a conclusion at the end.
Gotcha.
Okay, great. I think everybody's muted. Okay, so my name is Sheila Huggins. I'm chair of the Friends of Durham. The Friends of Durham is a nonpartisan political action committee here in Durham. We focus primarily on the Durham races. So you won't see us making endorsement on the governor's race or anything like that. We're really more focused on Durham and primarily 4 areas: education, taxes and government, strong economy, and public safety. So that's really what we're focusing on in terms of how we make decisions about who we think ought to be in some of these seats. We also have here with us today 3 of our members, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we'll go ahead and start. Wendell, I think, has already got his open. So Wendell, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Wendell Buller, currently Vice Chair, and welcome and glad to have you all here today.
And then Dan.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go. Afternoon, folks. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dan Jewell. I own a civil engineering and landscape architecture consulting firm in Durham and have been on the Friends Steering Committee for about 12 or 13 years now. But thanks for being here.
And Bob. Bob, you're still muted.
Thank you. I'm Bob Gutman. I've been in Durham about 51 years. I'm a retired physician and I was a businessman here also, and I'm very concerned about conservation and appreciate your spending time with us. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so Jan, it looks like you have, just let me double check here for a second. It looks like you've got 2, do you have your phone on and your video on? Just sort of checking here. All right, so do I need to remove the other one? Or are you going to be on video? Can you hear me okay, Jan? And you're muted, so I can't hear you. I still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. So you've got 2. So do you want to keep this one and I'll remove the other one?
Remove the other one down with the Judge Morgan, Justice Morgan. You can remove that, will you please?
Gotcha. Okay. All right, we are good to go. Now we've got both our members and our candidates. All right, so let me go through the first question here. And we're going to start with our candidate interviews. All right, and so I'm just going to start with Terrence, since you're the first one there in the middle. Let me unmute you. Oh. Give me just a second. All right, you are unmuted, Terrence.
Great.
And we'd like for you to maybe spend 3 minutes with an opening statement about yourself while you're running, whatever you'd like to share with us.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely no stranger when it comes to environmental injustice. I'm from Philadelphia. I was raised by a single mother who worked long hours to provide for my sister and I. I moved to Durham. Well, actually, I'm sorry. I moved to Halifax County, North Carolina, where I grew up and was raised with my grandfather, who was a part of agriculture and agribusiness operations. Taught me about being a man and about being available to assist and do what's in the best interest of people. I've moved to Durham, fell in love with the area. I'm a Durham County homeowner. I reside there, of course, with my wife, my children who are being raised in the Durham school system. And I'm excited about my initiatives. I believe and I have a passion for not only environmental justice, but making sure that everyone in the community has opportunities and access to clean and usable resources. So like I said, I'm just excited about the opportunity and look forward to being able to serve Durham County.
All right, thank you. Jillian, you're up next. Give me just a chance to switch my muting around here. All right, you are unmuted.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having us. I'm happy to be here. My name is Jillian Riley, and I have been an environmental justice activist for over 10 years now. So I started when I was just 15 years old, working to raise money for local farmers to stand up against factory farms. I've worked on the coast of North Carolina with individuals repairing their homes that were damaged by hurricanes. And most recently, I've been in the fight against coal ash pollution across the state, fighting for communities and with communities for clean water. I'm running because right now in the city of Durham and the county of Durham, we do not have an elected official with an environmental justice background. As an activist, I know how important it is to have an advocate at the local level. And so I'm running to do what I've been doing for over a decade now, which is fight for environmental justice for all people. So thanks again for having me. You're muted, Sheila.
All right, thank you. And now I'm going to, switch this around.
Sheila, I think you're experiencing some bandwidth issues here.
I think so too. Anjali, I think you are finally unmuted there.
Thank you guys for having me as well. I'm really glad to be here and get an opportunity to speak with you guys to kind of answer your questions and dive more into myself and my platform. But I am a Durham native, a Durham Public Schools graduate, a millennial, and a marine and environmental scientist running for District Supervisor of Durham County Soil and Water Conservation District. I was born and raised here in Durham, North Carolina, and I am ultimately a product of our Durham community, a host of dedicated DPS from currently a PhD student at Duke University. The topics around natural resource management, environmental conservation, and water quality, and done so, full-time all across the U.S., but also abroad as well. And I have been and continue to be committed to using my experience, my knowledge, and the education I've been blessed to receive to connect with and advocate for our Durham youth and our Durham community as a whole. So yeah, and I would just like to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking to you guys more.
All right, thank you. I think I fixed my bandwidth issue there. All right. All right, let me unmute Jan. Let's see, that's still not. All right, I've just unmuted everyone to just sort of make that a little bit easier. All right, so Jan, if you can unmute yourself, you can go ahead and do your introduction.
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Jan Cromartie, and I'm running for the Durham County Soil and Water Conservation here. One of my greatest concerns, the lead poisoning, and I believe in us having fresh drinking water and toxics and chemicals and waste out of our water. 70% of water here, if you all don't know, in North Carolina is used for agriculture. I was born in rural Lumberton, North Carolina, in Robeson County. My family owned 100 acres of land, about maybe a mile from my home. So I worked that farm during the summer for 40 years, handing tobacco under a bun. And I saw the hard work, sweat, tears of blood that they put in that farm. And I also served several years in the United States Navy. I'm trying to, as Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor, I want to implement a independent task force or coalition to address issues with our farmers here in Durham County, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic out here, and they very unsure themselves. I want to work on federal, state, and local grants that are out there. Like we just got allotted $33 billion for federal government, and that may not even be adequate for those in the United States. And we just got $300,000 in agriculture from the state of North Carolina for Durham County. So just a few things I want to do is get grants and funding and get more funds allocated and have folks do research on that and put in STEM programs and things of that nature. That's it.
You're
Hello?
muted. Sheila, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, we can hear you now, Jan. Sorry, go ahead.
Hello, hello.
Yes, if you can wrap up your intro.
Driver, do you hear me? Okay. You all didn't hear me initially. Okay.
We
I
heard
am from
most of what you said.
North Carolina. Okay. Did I state to you, I served in the United States Navy. I grew up on a farmland. Oh, okay. So I'm looking to be a part of Soil and Water to help all of us in Durham County with our fresh water and our soil. We have over 400 different types of soil here in the state of North Carolina and in Durham, and we grow on a lot of crops. I want to invest a lot of grants on the federal, state, and local level to kind of give them the farmers and the gardeners here some relaxation, because everyone's unsure of themselves. They need to nourish their crops by supplies and equipment. So I'm working hard on different grants, instead of, not just the grants that we have with soil and water. There are additional grants out there that the federal government and the state government are offering for agriculture, especially with COVID-19. So those are a few things that I look to do if I'm elected by such an illustrious organization as Friends of Durham.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you all for your introductions. All right.
Excuse
So,
me, Ms. Huggins, are we
yes.
going in and out?
Oh, I am. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. All right.
Hello?
Yes. So, Jan, can you hear me okay? Okay, sounds like you're muted. Okay.
Are we breaking up?
No, no, no. I'm getting ready to ask the first question. All right. So I'm
Yes.
going to start with just a little bit of a background on the program for other people who might watch the video later. So under North Carolina General Statute 139, soil and water conservation districts are organized as governmental subdivisions of the state, as well as independent political units. Districts work closely with county, state, and federal governments, and both public and private organizations in a non-regulatory capacity to carry out a comprehensive conservation program that protects and improves the county's natural resources while assisting private landowners in using conservation practices. This partnership has been the backbone of highly successful efforts over the last 75 years to address serious problems across the state, including soil erosion, flood damage, and water quality problems. District law provides authority to districts to meet the needs of landowners and citizens in several ways. One of those ways is through the delivery of state programs administered by the division, including the following: Agriculture Cost Share Program, Agricultural Water Resources Assistance Program, Community Conservation Assistance Program, and Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. And so I'm actually going to put all of those in the chat so that you can see those. But the question that I'm going to ask to you is, please share with us any experience and education you have relating to these state programs and your understanding of your role, if elected, as they relate to these programs. So give me 1 second. I want to make sure that you're able to see the list of programs there. And I've just put them in the chat that you can see there. And again, I'll read the question one more time, and then we will start with Ms. Boyd first. And again, the question is, please share with us any experience and education you have relating to these state programs and your understanding of your role, if elected, as they relate to these programs. All right, and Anjali, you can proceed.
So I'm just going to pick the cost share program because I think that's one of our stronger programs. And from an education perspective, I guess, you can kind of look at cost share programs as kind of somewhat of government subsidy programs to kind of help local agribusinesses keep up with best practices in the field and implement those best practices. And so as district supervisor, my role would be one, I see it kind of twofold. One, at a state and federal level, it comes down to advocating for the needs of Durham County and our local businesses and our local farmers as to what they need and what types of cost share programs are most beneficial to them. And so some of our more popular cost share programs have to do with water resources. And so local farmers can put in an application with our district to get a cost share, to, I guess, kind of a grant to implement a new irrigation system inside of their farm or something along that line. And so I think it comes from, as a district supervisor, one, being an advocate for those type of programs and the funding that we need to support our Durham community. But two, from a business perspective, I think it comes down to making sure businesses know about our cost share programs and how they can impact our local businesses. And so I think one of the things that we could do better with at Soil and Water is how we market our cost share programs, instead of going out to our local farmers and local businesses and saying, hey, we have this government program and it could impact your business or could help your business. I think a lot of businesses get that a lot of times from the government agencies. And so being more direct with, hey, we have this cost share program and these are the exact ways in which it could help your business. You could use it to implement a new irrigation system. You could use it to develop rain gardens or cisterns in your community or in your farm. So I think it comes from a twofold perspective.
Great, thank you. Mr. Cromarty, you will be next. And if you could answer the question, and again, the programs that I named are listed there in the chat.
I think Community Conservation Assistance Program is what I want to focus on, especially the water that we have here in Durham County for the farmers. I want them to conserve their water. And what they can do is we have about 4 or 5 ways farmers can conserve their water here in Durham County. We have irrigation, we have like weather apps that they can automatically set for the irrigation. We have soil management. We also can use organic. But when I say organic, when they doing the irrigation, they won't have chemicals when they use the organic method. So those are the things I want to do as far as water. And now our soil here, soil being the most fundamental resource of our agriculture here in North Carolina and in Durham County. So I want to, we can grow crops. Basically, North Carolina, when it comes to crops and soil, we can grow crops in different climates, tropical climates, colder climates. So I want to invest a lot of time in enriching our soil here in Durham County. And I'm going to set up, you said, I want to set up regulatory programs that are certified and licensed by the government on the federal, state, and local level.
Great, thank you, Mr.
That's
Cromarty. Mr. Priester, you are next.
Sure.
Okay.
So when it comes to cost share,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. When it comes to cost share programs, the purpose of them are to target, are to offer best management practices that are targeted to meet specific programs. And my responsibility, if elected as district supervisor, would be, of course, to deliver these programs, to deliver state programs administered by the division and citizens in various ways. That is, the cost share programs are really designed to be offered as a means to provide support to not just farmers, but also to urban areas as well. We have the ACSP, which is, of course, the Agricultural Cost Share Program, Agricultural Water Resources Assistance Program, which is the AGRAP, the Community Conservation Assistance Program, and numerous other programs. But we also have different grants that come in from various places, locally, state, or federally. And these funds can be used, and my idea as district supervisor, I feel like these funds are not really being used the way that they should be used in low-income and marginalized communities. My goal as district supervisor is to not only identify grants, but to achieve getting access to this funding that's necessary to better communities that are not only marginalized, but don't have access to resources that they should have access to, which are found in other areas of Durham County. I feel like that there needs to be another means, of course, of communication of the programs that are offered, the awareness of the conservation district, because it's a known fact that there are many people in Durham community that are not aware of the programs, projects, and the conservation district, what's its purpose and what it offers to the community that's around us.
Great, thank you. And Jillian, you will be the last one to answer this question.
Great. So I'm going to focus specifically on the Community Conservation Assistance Program. And it's kind of a long-term title for just saying reducing urban runoff. That's what that program is all about. So urban runoff plainly is whenever car oils or lawn pesticides roll off of rooftops, they roll off of driveways, off of sidewalks, and they roll into our stream and stormwater systems in Durham. And they end up going down the line and polluting our water sources in Durham. So this is a very, very important program. It's a voluntary participation program, which basically means the soil and water team cannot determine or dictate the types of conservation that every resident in Durham has to abide by. So as an associate board supervisor on the Durham Soil and Water Conservation District, I actually went and spoke with one of our grantees, the Cooperative Extension in Durham. And I spoke with Dr. Ashley Troth, and they received, in partnership with the Soil and Water team, a Community Conservation Assistance Program grant to install a cistern. They've actually installed 2. And cisterns are kind of like a small water tower, and they take this runoff from the roof when it's raining through the gutter, and they collect it and they filter it through, and then they can use that water instead of it running off and polluting our water sources in Durham. They collect that water and they use it for their lawns, they use it for their gardens. And so it's both reducing the nutrients, the negative nutrients and pollutants in our Durham water source, and it's conserving water, reducing our water bills, reducing the amount that we're using, preserving our natural resources to water their gardens. So I believe that as board supervisor, there are a couple things we need to do differently. So one, as an activist and as a community organizer, I have the skill sets necessary to actually go out, partnering with our staff, of course, to inform farmers and inform businesses about these opportunities. I've already spoken with a number of farmers in Durham who had no idea that the Soil and Water team actually gave out grants. This is a huge issue. It's especially an issue because a lot of these farmers are Black and brown farmers and are young farmers. And so we're seeing that there is a racial discrimination and divide, even in our own programs and who we're giving out money to, simply because folks do not know it exists. The second thing that I've already begun doing as an associate supervisor is I've reached out to current board members and I've said, you know, part of the issue is it's not transparent. It's not a transparent process to be able to apply to these programs. And I've looked at our website, and our website doesn't make it easy, right? There isn't a tab that says grant information, right? Cost share information. Come here if you want to apply. Learn about these programs, one tab they can click on. More so, in order to apply, you have to know exactly which staff member to call that goes along with each cost share program. And then they'll come out and they'll do an in-person assessment. Well, if you don't know who to call and you maybe don't know which program to apply for, a lot of them cover water, a lot of them cover economic development. Understanding specifically which program you want to apply for can be a little difficult. And so having a tab that all applicants can go to, so it's equitable and it's transparent, and then having an online form that they can fill out, that the staff can review and say, this is under the AgRat program, this is under the conservation program, this is under economic development program. That's one way I think we can make a huge difference in just making sure that the programs are transparent and equitable. And some of the staff that I've spoken with, they actually don't think it would be that much more of a burden and would actually be a more efficient use of their time rather than having to set up in-person assessments every single time someone is curious about a program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And just wanted to let you all know we have another Friends of Durham member who has joined us, Mr. Dick Ford. Thank you, Dick, for joining us. We're now going to move to the second question. All right, and so I'll start with an intro and then I'll move to the actual question, just like I did with the first one. So we just talked about primarily state programs, and I know a couple of you also touched on federal programs and grants. But there are also a few other ways in which the district law provides authority to districts to meet the needs of landowners and residents. And these include programs dealing with the following: water quality, farmland protection, wetlands, erosion, stormwater management, flood control, forestry management, cropland restoration, conservation easements, and environmental education, just to name a few. Your second question is going to be, please share with us any experience and education you have relating to these programs and topics, and your understanding of your role, if elected, as they relate to these programs. So again, I'm going to list those in the chat so that you can see those and you don't have to try to guess and remember. And this time we're going to start with Ms. Riley, and I'm going to read the question one more time. Please share with us any experience and education you have relating to these programs and topics, and your understanding of your role if elected as they relate to these programs and topics.
Man, these are so important. So I would say my most immediate experience is in water quality. So the reality is, in Durham, in the state of North Carolina, and even up to the federal level, our standards for water quality are not amazing. Besides the fact that Trump continues to roll back EPA regulations that protect our water quality, even at the state level with the Department of Environmental Quality, we are still fighting and continuing to fight for stricter water quality standards. So I've been a part of this fight for a number of years, working all across the state of North Carolina to ensure particularly that corporate pollution, right, does not get into our water sources. And what's happening in Durham specifically, Durham is sort of built on this ground of uranium, and we have a number of toxic pollutants in our water sources already. And it's very difficult to filter out these water sources. A lot of the issues come from a chemical called PFAS, and PFAS are in pretty much everything. They're on our clothes, they're on no-stick pans that we use in the kitchen. And this chemical is a very advanced chemical that we haven't yet caught up with in terms of our regulatory bodies around water quality. So I've met one-on-one with Secretary Regan at the Department of Environmental Quality to talk about water quality standards, not just in Durham County, but across the state. I believe that as board supervisor, we must work twofold: one, at the local level in Durham County, but two, beyond that, making sure and understanding that our role as a public servant, as a board supervisor, means that we're in the conversation, we're in the room, we're at the table whenever there are regulatory standards being developed at the state level. So there's a lot that I can say about that, but I will just end with, we have a great team in soil and water working on water quality issues, but I believe that we can do more. And as board supervisor, I will use my skill set, my background in understanding water quality policies and making sure that on the ground, we are trying to filter out these pollutants in our water source. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Priester, will have you answer the question next.
So when it comes to, and I would say the same, water quality is of high concern for me. I know when I became a Durham County homeowner, I mean, until that time, I was not really aware of how water quality affects one's life in its entirety. I was not aware of stormwater management and stormwater ponding and, you know, all these different things. I've learned these over years. But my point of bringing that up is there are several different areas in Durham County that are affected by water quality. There are different organizations that may have at some point addressed some of these concerns or have brought some of these concerns up. But as district supervisor, one of the things that I intend to do, I intend to actually work with several different projects. I intend to deal with the issue of the water quality by addressing some of our corporate concerns. I intend to work with stakeholders in Durham County when it comes to getting proper funding and being able to go through the processes that's necessary, such as with EPA. I know that there are several different Superfund sites that have been located around North Carolina in general, one specifically being in the Briar Creek area, which is very close to East Durham. And my concern for that is that Falls Lake is like running down that end. I would like to work with entities such as EPA, such as NCDEQ, to be able to have some of these different things resolved in their entirety, because I feel like that the East Durham area is not really getting the kind of support that it needs to when it comes to the water quality. Like we said, because of the industrial, we know that RTP is nearby. We know that we have the Bahama area park, and so these are concerns that I have that are part of my initiatives, as well as the access to safe community parks and play zones for children, because it's not just a water quality issue, it's also an air quality issue as well.
Thank you. And I think we may have lost Mr. Cromartie. If he comes back on, we'll give him an opportunity to answer the question also. But that means, Ms. Boyd, you are now up.
Thank you. So I'm going to kind of tackle two of them because they kind of they're kind of interconnected for me, which is education and restoration, environmental restoration, wetland, and whatnot. So I have worked the last 2 years with Duke University Marine Lab, Community Science Initiative, and the NC State Environmental Education Lab to get environmental education curriculum into public schools throughout the state of North Carolina. And we're continuously designing these curriculums and working with teachers to partner with them to get them training. They get stipends by participating in our classes and things of that nature. And so I've been working at that for a while, just because I understand the importance, being that I probably wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for sheer luck, that I did not see myself in our environmental conservation leaders growing up, nor did I learn a ton about environmental conservation throughout my schooling when I was here. And so it's been extremely, I guess, something I've been super passionate about is trying to get these issues and this curriculum into schools, because we're, as a, I guess, country, really, we're facing some of the most pressing environmental issues, which have, health and economic implications, and they're super interdisciplinary and affecting every kind of aspect of our lives. And so I understand the importance of making sure that we're getting as many people as we can from diverse backgrounds and diverse lens points into this field to help us solve some of these problems. And then with that, I've also been working, I'm also at Duke, part of the Wetland Center at Duke. And so one of the things that we have done in the past is we did this really big restoration project within the county where Duke donated some land to the county, and we did a big restoration project which has extremely big implications on the environment when it comes to flooding, water quality, erosion, and all of that good stuff. And so my goal is to not only continue to get this environmental education curriculum into schools, but also to develop internship and job training programs for students to go into, to complete restoration projects around our county. So where that has to do with wetland restoration projects, stream and river restoration projects, all of which have enormous implications on our, some of the other things that are already listed, like we're talking about water quality, erosion, and all of that stuff. And so kind of trying to do take an interdisciplinary, holistic approach to some of these problems, I think is really important, and that's one of the things I'm hoping to continue to do as district supervisor.
All right, thank you. So that pretty much wraps up the first set of interview questions with those two. So now I'm going to open it up to the rest of our members to see what kinds of questions they may have. And they can either ask questions individually based on your experiences, your education, or maybe the answer that you provided, or they may have a question that they want all of the candidates to answer. So they will let you know. But there you go, Dan, Bob, and Wendell. Okay, so Dan wants to go first.
Sure. Thank you, and thank you all for your very thorough responses to the questions that we put together. I want to take a little broader look at things, and this is a question that I'd like you all to think about and maybe just spend a minute or two answering. So we have a Durham County Soil and Water Conservation Board, which you're all interested and seems like well qualified to be on. But we live in a region where runoff does not respect county lines. So we have most of our drinking water watershed actually comes in from Person County, not Durham County, some of it from Orange County, and our future drinking water source that we're not using right now, Jordan Lake. We don't get water from Jordan Lake, but someday we will as we grow. That comes from as far away as Alamance County, Guilford County, that sort of thing. So as a commissioner, is there a role for our Soil and Water Conservation Board to be coordinating and encouraging those other counties to be as diligent about protecting our drinking water as we in Durham are about protecting Wake County's drinking water? Because most of our stormwater rules protect Wake, Cary, and Raleigh's water, not our own. So. And Sheila, if you just want to call out the panelists one at a time, maybe for a response, I would appreciate that. So thank you.
Ms. Boyd, we'll start with you this time.
Thank you. And yes, there is definitely a role, and there is the Soil and Water Commissioner, which basically is all of the soil and water district supervisors throughout the state of North Carolina, which is about 450 of them. And so they all work together on numerous things and projects, and I totally agree. It's extremely important that we are kind of working with our partners in other counties, because like you said, the runoff doesn't come from here, but same kind of goes for us, and when we're doing certain things that affect our coastal communities, when it has to do with their preparedness for extreme weather events. And so I definitely believe that we definitely should take a more active role in forming these partnerships with other districts and ensuring that we're working as a collective to ensure that not only our water sources are preserved, but throughout the state of North Carolina they are. And so I would definitely be more than happy, and there's already kind of a coalition that works, but more than happy to take a more active role in I guess communicating on a regular basis and kind of updating other districts and kind of being more in the loop with them. And so yes, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Priester, if you could respond to the question next, please.
Sure. My understanding is that all of the soil and water conservation district supervisors are expected to work together. Annually, they come together to have different meetings and conferences to not only discuss policies and procedures, but also the needs and the concerns within inside of the communities throughout North Carolina. In North Carolina, there are I say an estimate of about 492 soil and water district supervisors between the 96 districts. And it's important for us to stay in communication with soil and water district supervisors in adjacent counties that we live near or that has an effect on our natural resources. So as district supervisor, my goal is to do just that. Be transparent and to stay proactively involved with what's going on in the conservation districts adjacent to where we are in Durham County that affects our resources.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Riley, if you could wrap up that question for us.
Yes. So I am under the belief that all waters eventually lead together. And I have been extremely concerned about the water quality standards in Person County and how they will impact our water quality standards in Durham, especially because our water is in northern Durham, which borders Person County. So for the past 2.5 years, I've done work in Person County with the county commissioners there and community members around specifically the 2 coal plants which live on Hyco Lake. They are, one of them is the largest coal plant in the state of North Carolina. Both of them are incredibly old. They're over 50 years old at this point. So they need to be retired, and there's linkages to how the coal plant is impacting their water quality in Person County. And I believe that over time, if not already, it's impacting Durham County's water quality as well. So the way and the structure of the soil and water boards is that we're supposed to operate regionally. And so we are broken up regionally, and we have actually representation at the regional level. There's a regional board, which includes Person County. The reality is it's actually kind of hard to recruit people to those regional boards. You have to have been serving for 2 terms, so you have to have strong experience as a board supervisor. But it's actually difficult to get other counties interested in that position, which means we need to do a better job of reaching out to those counties. We take this role very seriously, as you mentioned, right, in Durham County, about not only protecting our water quality, but protecting our neighbors' water quality as well. So we need to make sure that we are building those strong relationships and let them know, hey, we take this really seriously. Let's work together and let's see what y'all are working on too, so we can all benefit from each other. Because you're absolutely right. You know, Hyco Lake isn't that far away from Mickey Lake and from our reservoirs and water sources in Durham, and we need to be addressing that long ago. But if not, we need to start addressing it now.
Thanks. Thank you, Sheila.
Next question, Bob or Wendell?
Go ahead, Wendell.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Riley, this is more of a comment to your to what you just stated. I do have a question. I am a realtor and a Durham native. I will share with you that all 3 of you should know there is a hydroelectric plant in Person County scheduled for shutdown in March, and it's going to be decommissioned. And the reason I know this, one of my friends of 30 years actually worked there, and it had to be a Canadian firm who will be shutting that firm down. So there'll be 2 coal power plants left. And because of the energy deal, they will, of course, come under different EPA guidelines. So we just talked about this on Friday. But my question to all 3 of you, Chair, is I want to know what each of your thoughts are or knowledge about the Bigot Waters Act. What is the USA Act? Because they do directly affect what you do. And under the Bigot Waters Act, which Congress is dealing with, it's been several years, FEMA would get control of all bodies of water in the continental United States. Subsequently, that will impact the ability for Durham County to impound water for future drinking supply, as well as the impact on commercial and residential development with regard to impervious surface allotment requirements of land use, which is under your purview. So I do want to hear from each of you what your familiarity is with the Bigot Waters Act and the impact on your job as a district water supervisor in trying to ensure we have not only proper drinking water, but the capacity for Durham County to expand for the next 25 or 30 years and increase the population base. So the primary question is the Bigot Waters Act and how it affects you as a supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Riley, we'll start with you this time.
So I'm not super familiar with the act. I want to just be transparent about that. But I will say that the soil and water team has representation all the way up to the federal level. So NCRS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, actually represents Durham County. He's a man named Frank Williams, and I've spoken with him one-on-one to talk about, you know, how can I make sure as an associate supervisor and potentially a full-time board supervisor that Durham County is represented at the state level, and even further at the national level. Kind of what I mentioned before, he is desperate for people to stand up. He's desperate for people to really take a leadership role. All across the state, there are other boards and conservation boards that they really aren't taking a strong role and taking notice of what's happening at the federal level. So he represents us, and in terms of the Big Waters Act, I would really rely on him and his leadership in knowing that he has been serving and representing the state of North Carolina and the entire eastern region of the United States at the federal level, and making sure that we are community-led first. That's one thing I love about the Soil and Water and how it was founded, is that it's about how communities are first impacted, and it's not necessarily about large scale legislation that covers all areas, but it's about how every community deals with water conservation and land conservation on their own. And so I would partner with him, and I'd partner with our other representatives at the federal level to make sure that Durham County and the state of North Carolina does have a say in what happens with our water sources. And it's not just something that we're sort of taken, we just get the legislation and we don't have any say in it. I believe that we should have a seat at the table in terms of how we conduct our water quality.
Thank you. Mr. Priester.
Sure. So I too am not that familiar with the bigger act. However, I do know that it does have a goal of addressing flood losses and issues of that nature. Where there wasn't a concern years ago in North Carolina and in North Carolina areas before, there are now. We know in Durham County there is quite a bit of flooding that takes place. I mean, it's heavy rain at that. So my goal is to not only familiarize myself with concerns, acts such as these, and programs that are available to address concerns involving these, but also to stay involved and engaged with EPA, with FEMA, with other entities and programs and organizations that are out there to address and come up with a comprehensive plan to be able to resolve issues involving flood and flood loss. I know Cheek Road is one of the areas in Durham that is heavily flooded when it comes to these concerns. So yeah, I have a plan that's in place to be able to address these issues.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd.
I think that's a great question, and I'm somewhat familiar with the Big Waters Act, but more with regards to how it's affecting coastal communities. That was a really good point of how you brought it up about how it's going to impact communities like Durham that are 3+ hours away from the beach or whatnot. But I think what's important here is that one, Soil and Water does have representation at the local, federal, and state level, which I think is imperative that we take advantage of those partnerships, but not also take advantage, but leverage those. And so if we do have concerns about something that may benefit other parts of the state, but not necessarily our community, and may have some negative implications on our community, I think that's an area where we partner with with FEMA and the federal government, but also those coastal communities to say, okay, so what are your concerns? Your concerns are around natural disasters and natural disaster preparedness. Let's figure out what we can do in Durham County to help you prepare as well. Because ultimately the things that we do in Durham also have an impact on how these communities are able to, be resilient after those. And so decreasing flooding here decreases flooding down the line. So working with them to not only address their concerns in our area, but then also facilitate, kind of being transparent about, okay, so now that we've got that done, here's what our concerns are about how this new act will impact, have the negative impacts on our community. And let's figure out how we can mitigate that and kind of work together again on that type of thing. And so like was mentioned previously, the Soil and Water District Supervisors, they do work on a regional scale, but I think that's not enough because of these situations that you're bringing up. There has to be some type of statewide, really nationwide, but definitely statewide connections between these districts, because things that happen above us, go all the way down. The implications just kind of trickle out. And so I think it's important that we build those connections, even if they're not already there, but that we have these networks and we expand upon them, or even work to advocate for these type of committees. Like, hey, we need a committee that's statewide, has representations from various districts, so we can talk about these programs and how that will impact other communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Bob, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yes, thank you very much. And this has been very educational for me. I can see that all three of you understand a great deal about processes and management of those processes, and I know that's important. I want to go to a different couple of levels. In particular, what is the commissioner's role in leadership for new ideas or importing ideas that have become very useful, not only in surrounding areas of North Carolina and the United States, but in other countries? There is, as several of you probably know, at least one country where runoff is a very small problem because recycling is done for 80% of the water that comes out of toilets. And that country also has universal, as far as I understand it, drip irrigation. Are you in a position to take a leading position and put Durham as the star of North Carolina in bringing in new ideas of that sort?
All right, Ms. Boyd, we'll start with you this time.
To answer your question, yes, and I'm extremely excited about making that a thing. And so I think one of the most powerful aspects of soil and water, to me at least, is the fact that we have representation and a voice at all of these different levels. And so we need to utilize that. And so I think, especially within Durham, one of the things I'm really passionate about and think would be, nobody has really done it successfully yet, is urban farming and urban agriculture businesses, and making a very robust system of that has implications for, literally could have implications for every aspect of such as we have, you could take it from perspective of, aquaponics, urban farming, all these different things that will have really vast impacts. Sorry, I heard something. And so I think we as a county, especially considering that we also have some of the top institutions in our field right around the corner, have a really big opportunity to partner with these institutions, but also partnering with local businesses to understand what their input is and advocating for their needs at the local, at the local, state, and federal level, and making sure that we can put together some type of system that is robust, that withstands the test of times, that's sustainable, and that kind of accomplishes all of these goals that we're trying to do, that decreases flooding, that increases our community's ability to prepare for extreme weather events, that solves food insecurities and things of that nature. So yes, I think we definitely at a local level have an ability as a supervisor and as a board really to kind of put Durham on the forefront of what urban sustainability could look like.
Thank you. Mr. Priester.
Certainly. So many of my initiatives that I currently have are to do just that, to conserve our water and preserve our water resources. One specifically would be the toilet rebate program the city of Durham currently offers. By getting an efficient toilet, you are able to get a rebate from the city for participating in conserving water resources. There are many different businesses in Durham, such as like the Ritz Car Wash and other areas that use water that recycles their water. The conservation district does have the ability, as we've mentioned earlier, to be able to talk to other entities, other departments, to be able to offer not only incentives, but to be able to come up with an effective system as far as getting everything on a unified means for everyone to not only preserve and conserve resources, but to offer better quality resources than what we are currently receiving or have access to. Another initiative that we actually had, well, one of my initiatives would be the conservation efforts, using unused territories. We know that there are a lot of areas within Durham that may be purchasable, should I say, or that may be currently owned, but may not necessarily be able to have certain construction on them, may not be able to be used for certain purposes. But the goal is to access unused territories for conservation efforts, to be able to handle some of the runoff, to be able to handle the contaminants and other things, from keeping it from getting into our water supply.
Thank you. Ms. Riley, please.
So I would say yes and no would be my answer. So I do believe there are lots of opportunities for innovation, for efficiency. For example, on my platform, I talk about sustainabilities in schools. So the Soil and Water team just recently completed a multi-year project over at Southern High School. It was a storm restoration project that actually conserves the water and saves the school district $15,000 per year, because they use that water to water the the athletic fields, right? So this is a huge opportunity where we can actually build our partnerships with the Durham Public School System, with the Board of Education, with the county commissioners, and do more projects like this. The Soil and Water team is just now starting to do a project over at Riverside High School, which also has the opportunity to save the school district $15,000 per year, right? We know the education budget in Durham needs to be expanded. And so this is one way that we can build some innovation efficiency in the way that, and our work that meets our conservation goals while also meeting the goals of education. But I would also say no, because we're not a regulatory body. So the drip irrigation, for example, and the recycling of toilet water, that would also just be a water management services program. And so we don't have the authority to enforce everyone in Durham to follow certain practices, right? We really rely on voluntary participation. And we also don't have the access as a Soil and Water team to make sure that the water management system are using new and innovative technology. But what we can do is partner. What we can do is build those relationships. And I've spoken with the director of the Soil and Water team, Eddie, who's been the director for over 35 years. And I said, you know, what do you need as a supervisor, right? What's new, what's missing? And he was like, we need someone to build partnerships with other government officials. We need someone to go out there and help us build these partnerships. And I said I was really interested in the school projects that he's been doing. And he was like, and we need someone to build partnerships with the Board of Education. We don't have the staff capacity to do that. And we need a board supervisor that will. And so although we don't have the regulatory body to make some of these decisions around the water quality from a county management level, we do have the opportunity to say, you know what, let's talk about how we're doing this. Let's talk about some long-term changes we can make. Let's talk about the budget. Let's go over the numbers. And let's see how we can partner together to meet our conservation goals, our water quality goals, your goals as county commissioners, as city council, as Board of Education. And let's partner so we can save money in the long run, but also build some innovation and some efficiency into the way that we're governing. Right now, I think there's a lot of silos that happen in Durham government. And I think that we need to begin to build those partnerships and break down those silos so we can all work better together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any more questions from our Friends of Durham members? Dick, I saw that you checked out, but you're back now. Dick, did you have a question you wanted to ask? No? All right, so let me sort of throw one out there. So there's been a lot of, I guess, interest in equity issues, and not just locally, but at the federal level. And so what do you see your role in terms of what you would be doing as how you can contribute to making some of these programs more equitable in how they're administered, managed, how the money is given out? Where do you see your role fitting in with making sure that Durham does this in a more equitable manner? And I'll start with Mr. Priester.
I believe that awareness and education is going to be key in this. I believe that not only farmers, businesses, landowners, residents, students, teachers, and any other stakeholder that's in Durham County, they need to know about the conservation district. They need to know about the programs. They need to know about different projects that are taking place. It's going to take partnerships. It's going to take us working with nonprofit organizations. It's going to take us with being engaged, not just with inside the community, but also within our local, state, and federal government meetings. It's going to take, getting the community involved in what's going on with the decision making, what's going on with different program releases and information pertaining to such. And so my goal is to keep everyone educated, to offer incentives for keeping interest, such as keeping students excited about being involved in different programs and projects, having parents involved, having schools involved, just having the entire community, in essence, involved in what's going on. So that way we can ensure that everyone is getting distributed with equitable access, not just to resources financially, but also, like we've talked about, our air, our soil, our water, making sure that the programs are being distributed out fairly.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd, we'll go to you.
Thanks. I think we actually have a lot of power to make, federal resources more equitable, just because we as a district have the ability to kind of design how we, the requirements for getting into our programs and things of that nature. And so I think it's really important because, one, we get that federal resource, but two, we kind of get to decide how we divvy it out and whatnot. And so I think it comes down to us as a district and making sure our application processes are very equitable and transparent and easy to find. We already have like a point system in place, which basically takes into account applicants' ability to, afford something that they're trying to do, especially if it's related to a cost share program, different programs, if they have a small farm, those type of things. So I think definitely we should keep doing keep up with our point system, because I think it is effective in making our programs more fair and equitable. But I also think we need a new way to get people into our programs. We can't just solely rely on people to initiate the process to be able to want a grant from Soil and Water, because, like, I think everybody here understands and kind of has said, most people in Durham County do not know what Soil and Water does, or like where our programs are. And so I think it's a big, I think it's kind of our burden to make sure that people know about these programs and how to access them and how to apply to them. But I also think it's important for us to be transparent about who got all the awards that we handed out this year, how much were they, who did they go to, and that should be easily found on our website. You shouldn't have to call Soil and Water and track down, like, hey, what happened with the funds from this program? Like, that shouldn't be that type of program. So I totally agree that our website definitely needs to be revamped and more accessible, but I think our programs as a whole just need to be more transparent out in the opening. And I think that has a lot to do with marketing and how we market our programs to Durham residents. And so I think it's really the burdens on us to improve our marketing and make sure that our programs stay aligned with our point system, and ensuring that we do have these kind of barriers in place to mitigate for people who can't afford, who come from low backgrounds, who have a small farm and things of that nature.
Thank you. Ms. Riley.
So when I say environmental justice, I mean addressing the racial and gender disparities within our environmental community in Durham. So a couple ideas. So the first is the Soil and Water team receives USDA grants. Some of those grants are specified, quote unquote, for minority farmers. Minority meaning Black, brown, younger, right? They're just now starting in the farming community, and women. These are very strict standards and guidelines that I believe we need to adapt for all of our grants, right? Whether that's at the local level, money we get from the county, at the state level, money we get from the NCGA. We have a ranking system that is supposed to be there exactly to address the inequities within our grant system. but we do not have the same standards of qualifications for every single grant and for the ranking systems. And so what happens is we have people apply to grants, and oftentimes the ranking system will be adjusted for the impact on the earth, the impact of conservation. And I think that's really important, but we cannot miss out on a conversation about race and gender. We cannot do it. And so by adding in these requirements into every single grant that we have, which we have the power to do that, we have the power of who receives the money, what our ranking system looks like. I think that will go a long way in ensuring that the money we give out looks at the conservation concerns, looks at the environmental concerns, but also looks at the equity concerns and the justice concerns in what we're giving out. The second thing I'll add is the Soil and Water team partners with the Downtown Farmers Market, it partners with the South Durham Farmers Market, and it's just recently begun partnering with the Black Durham Farmers Market. But we need to strengthen those partnerships, right? A lot of the vendors at the South Durham and the Downtown Durham are white. A lot of them may or may not actually live in Durham County. We need to make sure that we have representation every single week of Black farmers and every single week of urban farmers. So the Black Farmers Market happens, once a month now, but this needs to be a weekly thing. And we need to make sure that we're partnering with the founders of that organization to make sure that not only are we going to have a dedicated monthly event, but we're also going to make sure that our most attended farmers markets, which are every single week, also have representation there as well. I think we'd be doing a really big injustice if we didn't address the inequities at our weekly farmers markets and make sure that we have representation of everyone in Durham on a weekly basis. Thank you.
Thank you. And if the members don't mind, I have one more question. So again, another, and I don't even want to call it a trending topic. It's, unfortunate right now that we are in a situation where we're in a global pandemic and it is impacting every family in this state and in this country. So if you could speak a little bit about your thoughts on how your work on the soil and water, in the soil and water position, would be able to help families in Durham, if there are programs that you know of, if there are specific ideas that you have, that because of you sitting in that position, you think you would be able to help families in Durham that are experiencing and suffering a lot of pain because of this pandemic. If you could share those, that would be great. And Mr. Priester, again, I'll start with you first.
Sure. So one of my initiatives would include partnering with farmers to offer farm-to-home deliveries. We know that there's a lot of social distancing is going on. There's a lot of other kinks as far as being able to have access to certain resources, or there being a change in operations for various businesses throughout Durham County. Another thing that I'm trying to do is also get more hands-on involvement for students. When it comes to agriculture and gardening, it requires math. When it comes to the process of planting and gardening, or rather planting and fertilization, it requires a sense of science. Using scientific methods and report writing would speak to English and reading comprehension. So what I would like to do is to maybe offer some programs, whether if we're still in the middle of this pandemic and trying to work through it, having some virtual webinars or virtual programs or events set up that we can actually work with students or work with schools or parents rather, to actually get them engaged and involved, these students involved with being able to learn about not just conservation efforts, but also agriculture and science.
Thank you. Ms. Riley, we'll go to you this time next.
So I've been thinking a lot about this. COVID-19 has brought to light a lot of the systems that are broken in the US, one of which is our food industrial system. within the first month of COVID, we saw food flying off the shelves. We saw shelves remaining empty. We also saw a lot of those foods that were for the WIC program, right? We saw a lot of those foods that were for the EBT program. And we saw communities facing food insecurity in a way that has never been seen before in Durham. This is because, obviously there are outbreaks in the meat industries with COVID, with schools being closed, kids were no longer receiving 2 free meals a day. And this is an area I think that the Soil and Water team could really benefit and help address. So I volunteer every week or every 2 weeks with the Fed Up food distribution out there and by the Scrap Exchange in Lakewood. And we give out fresh fruits and vegetables, period. We're not a food pantry that gives out, boxed mac and cheese or canned food. We give out fresh fruits and vegetables. And how they receive those fresh fruits and vegetables are from local farmers who agree to give up some of their harvest to give back to the community. One of those farmers is Sankofa Farms, and I had the opportunity of touring his farm. But I think that what we could do as soil and water supervisors is actually go back to all the farmers that benefited from our cost share programs and just say, hey, these are a couple opportunities that are happening in Durham, right? The free food, the free lunch opportunities, working with schools that are giving out bags of food, and say, we're going to offer this opportunity if you're able, as a farmer, if you have the ability, the financial ability, to give up some of your harvest every 2 weeks to donate some fresh fruits and vegetables to families in need. And I think that this is a community-wide effort that we could really get behind and use our connections, not just as board of supervisors, but as a team that has been working for years in the Durham community with farmers, and say, let's give back to the community. We know that we've worked with you in the past on grants. If you have an opportunity, we can connect you. I think being that connection is something that we could really do a lot better, specifically right now during COVID, while food insecurity is so rampant in Durham. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd, could you wrap that up for us?
Yeah, so I think that's, I would want to tackle that from a twofold, perspective. There's been a recent study that just came out that kind of projected that about one third of small and minority-owned farmers will go bankrupt by the end of the year due to COVID. And with that, also, they're finding that farmers who are tech savvy and have access to technology are faring way better than their counterparts. And so being that Durham, one, has a really big, has a good farming community, but also, we have tons of tech startup companies that I've already been talking with and kind of brainstorming ideas. And so I think one of those big issues, or I guess one of the big things that we can be a connector with, is connecting farmers with essential technology that will help them increase their sales during and after the pandemic. And so making those bridges and those networking opportunities so that they can collaborate and that those programs can do that. And I know a ton of these tech businesses are actually doing similar things pro bono for people. And so I've spoken with some of them about the opportunity, and they were really excited about that and a way to give back to the community. And then another thing is the food insecurity. About 20% of our students here in Durham County are food insecure. And so I think as a district, we need to find very innovative ways to make sure our students are getting meals. I think our whole county is going online for the fall. And so that kind of brings this question of how do we get meals to these students who need them? And so I think it's a way for our district also to partner, do these innovative ways. Let's try and do food markets where, it's like a food truck food market where they can go into these low income neighborhoods that don't necessarily have access to clean food, but also partnering with these, all of these neighborhoods have gas stations and places like that, partnering with these type of businesses to get farmers to sell their fresh foods into those type of establishments that these students are already going to on a daily basis. And so trying to make those connections, but also doing incentives, helping them with the technical assistance that come into play when it comes to getting their food sold in some of these places, has to come down to us as a district providing those services and helping farmers do that. So I think it's a twofold answer, and it could possibly solve a couple of our problems that we're already seeing.
Thank you. Okay, so Dan, Wendell, Dick, Bob, anybody else have any additional questions? I think Wendell has a question.
Hey, Madam Chair, thank you. And this is a question for three. Thank you for running for office. And this was more focused on, listen to what Ms. Boyd just stated. I did have an expanded view of my statement, but what you just stated, and Ms. Riley as well as Mr. Priester, the total valuation of farm in this country from the large majority approaching $1.3 trillion. Minority-owned farms are less than 400 billion with an average value of less than $30,000. So what you're looking at, and then I'm in real estate. So what you hear me talk a lot about is direct attributed to real estate, and we have years of data. There is a component of what's taking place right now under land use policies, which Dan Jewell can definitely speak to. I'd like to know what your thoughts would be in looking at the current land use policies that would allow the repurposing of farmland that does not go into bankruptcy and it is absorbed by larger commercial entities where this land under soil and water, we're talking about usage now, conservation easements, but more important from a productive standpoint to benefit the residents in Durham City and Durham County. And I'd like to know in your role, how strong would you be open to look at that? Because the more restrictive our land use policies are, the more reduced the ability of private property right owners to maximize their land. And when you have food insecurities, as Ms. Riley talked about, which we have a lot of food deserts in Durham, this may be alternatives using the current land that we have while helping our farmers across the board survive, which would be a changed environment. So my fundamental question is, how strong would each of you be in pursuing looking at our land use policies in order to effect that change for our population now and in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Wendell. Okay, we will start with Ms. Boyd first this time.
Yeah, so I kind of have a clarifying question. So are you asking how we would be, if we would be interested in looking at are you saying that the current land use I guess, principles?
It's called the Uniform Development Ordinance. You look at the UDO, Durham County, when you're looking at the ordinances to look at what our current land use policies, we have policies that could be outdated, which actually impact what you all three are talking about right now. So as a supervisor, in order to expand your footprint and to allow for more options for the farmers, as Mr. Priester talked about, then how strong would you be to look at those policies to help the voters and citizens in this county, in the city?
Yeah, so I am totally on board with that. I think it's extremely important that our board of supervisors or somebody in our district has a stronger voice on the OUD, on that planning committee, and with looking at those roles. And so we're currently not, I guess, from my understanding, the conversations I've had with supervisors, we don't really have a strong voice when it comes to those things. And those are kind of more county commissioner and things of that nature. And so I am advocating and have been advocating for us to have a stronger voice on that committee, to have some say so and how we can better advocate for our farmers when it comes to that, because we currently haven't had that ability, which I think is imperative that we do. And so I think that comes down to also building those relationships, but also putting pressure on our local government to make sure that we do have a voice on those committees. Seeing that a lot of the work that we do as a district has great implications and has really big impact on our Durham community, from the restoration projects to the financial help that we give farmers. So we should not be included in those conversations when it comes to what's going on around Durham. So I totally agree that we need to have a stronger voice and we need representation at that level. So yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Riley, if you could answer next, please.
Yeah, so Miss Boyd is correct, right? The Soil and Water team does not have a huge say in planning commission, planning committee projects and policies. And this is an issue. So I've been speaking with a community in East Durham who is very concerned about a new development. They're concerned because two things. One, the development backs into a wetland where there's already an issue of flooding. And two, it backs into an area where the community was about to build a community garden. So we need to have a very deep dive look at our policies and our land use policies to ensure that, yes, we have affordable housing, yes, we have new opportunities for development, but how are they impacting the existing communities and how are they impacting the environment? So one of the ways we can do this is actually partnering not just with the Planning Commission, but partnering with the Environmental Affairs Board, because this is one of their main initiatives. Their main initiatives is we are developing Durham in a sustainable way that benefits the community. It doesn't create more gentrification, doesn't oust people from their homes, but it allows people to grow from within that community. And so when we have an issue like in East Durham that's already rampant with gentrification, and there's a new development that backs into a wetland that's being overlooked, and it backs into a property where a community wants to build a garden, that's completely overlooked. To me, those are two red flags where we're developing in a way that will long-term have negative impacts for the environment. If it has an impact on the flooding issue, right, well, we're a hurricane state, right? So, I mean, long-term, I mean, just because we're a hurricane state and just because it's a flood issue doesn't mean that community is going to be allowed to buy flood insurance, right? So if it happens where homes are then destroyed because of hurricanes and because of increased flooding, but they don't have the insurance because they actually weren't allowed to buy the insurance, right? How does that impact their family long term? How does that impact generational wealth? How does that impact their land value, right? So I'm with you. I think that our policies, our land use policies have kind of just been pushed aside for the sake of development, but we need to pause and say, what's going on? How is this impacting folks? How is this impacting the environment? And how can we do it better? So that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Priester.
Certainly. On the subject of what Mr. Wendell had just asked, I would say that I have very strong feelings about being able to make sure that no land goes to waste, to make Durham a better place to live for everyone. I have a master's in public administration. I have over 10 years of experience writing policy implementation, budgeting, forecasting, and measuring program implementation. So I intend to work with numerous departments, entities, organizations, nonprofit, local, state, federal, regardless, to make sure that these type of issues are addressed properly. I plan on working with the Land Loss Prevention Project. I also plan on working with the Durham Planning Department. I plan on working with City Council. I plan on working with the County Commissioners. I plan on making sure that I attend Natural General Assembly sessions to speak with numerous individuals, lawmakers in this. My goal is to make sure that, like I said, every bit of the land is able to be used. One thing that I can tell you that I've seen as a resident is there's been properties that have either been abandoned, stepped over. There's been numerous projects where new buildings and developments are constantly being created, but it has not to say that there are certain buildings, certain structures that may still be good, that may still be able to be used. I know we have the gentrification issue. We have so many other different concerns, but I have strong feelings about it. And that's why it's a part of my initiatives. And I intend to do everything I can about it.
Thank you. And thank you all. I see it's right at about 5 o'clock. And so unless the members have any more pressing questions, we're going to use the next few minutes to give each of you an opportunity to wrap up. And again, if you could just take just a couple of minutes to do that. Any last parting words, anything else that you want to let us know about? And we will start with Ms. Riley.
Well, thank you all so much for this opportunity and to speak with y'all today. I'll just sort of wrap up the way that I began, which is environmental justice is what I do. It's what I've been doing for over a decade. It's the perspective in which I attempt to live my life. And I believe that there are lots of opportunities and unique opportunities, innovation to build into our governance in Durham and specifically into the Soil and Water Board in a way that we've never done before. I believe that we can work at the local level and at the state level and even at the federal level to represent Durham County and make sure that we are the most progressive and innovative county in the state of North Carolina. So right now, Durham doesn't have any elected official with an environmental justice background. As a longtime activist, environmental justice activist, I know how important, how crucial it is to have an advocate at the local level. So I'm running to be that advocate for Durham Soil and Water Conservation Board. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to be here with you guys. You guys asked some really great questions and had me thinking, so I really appreciate that and having the opportunity just to be with you guys and I introduce myself. But I think it's important for a number of reasons to have someone with my background in this position. One, of course, is my immersion in the environmental conservation field and as a scientist and having that expertise to bring to the table, as well as those connections in those fields to kind of making sure that we're bringing science to the table and that it's being implemented within our conservation skills at a local level. Another one is because of my extensive roots in Durham. I've been here all my life. My family has been here for generations, and I have the connections and the awareness to not only advocate for our community, but also to ensure that the programs that we have are being connected to people in our community that will benefit from them the most and who need them the most. And then finally, my run for supervisor is bigger than, just bringing science to the table or just having somebody from the community serve in this position, but it's also about increasing representation in the environmental conservation field. For far too long, it has been seen throughout, the world, I guess, that environmental conservation is kind of gatekept by a select few, and only certain people, certain types of people are allowed to be, environmental scientists and have that say so in environmental conservation. And so if not anything, one of the biggest things I'm super passionate about is ensuring that we're advocating and elevating voices of our youth, of people of color, and of women in these fields, and making sure that we are tackling these huge problems that have very big implications on our world and on our community from a diversity of lens points and viewpoints, and that we're kind of creating not only sustainable solutions, but equitable solutions that will not reinforce systems of inequalities as they have in the past. And so making sure that our conservation and the work that we're doing is equitable and has vast implications for our education system, our health system, and our economic system.
All right, Mr. Priester.
Sure. As I've stated earlier, I'm running for the Durham County Soil and Water District Supervisor for several reasons. I believe that the Friends of Durham's mission aligns with my entire platform of making Durham a better place to live. I am passionate when it comes to environmental equality, equity, and justice, as well as inclusion. Because, like I said, I have firsthand experience of being exposed to environmental injustice. And when it comes to environmental injustice, it affects all of us, everyone that lives in Durham or that works in Durham. Environmental injustice is not just a public health concern. It's not just a mental health issue. It's an education issue. It's a public safety issue. It's an economic issue. It is a social issue. And so it affects every domain of one's life. We don't need a doctor to resolve an environmental justice issue. We don't need an accountant to resolve an environmental justice issue. We don't need a scientist to resolve an environmental justice issue. What we need is better policy, implementation, and oversight. I'm a public administrator. I have an MPA and over 10 years of experience working with teams to implement programs and to manage and measure program implementation and effectiveness. And so this is what I bring to the Conservation District. And I believe that if we work together, we can make Durham a better place to live for everyone.
All right, thank you. And so I just added a final note there in the Zoom chat. If you have any additional information that you would like to provide to us, just feel free to send it to our email, friendsofdurham@gmail.com. We will be making our recording here available to some of our other members so that they will have a chance to get to know you like we have today. And we hope to get our endorsement out in a few days. Do you have any questions of us before we all sign off? Or before you guys sign off? We're gonna stick around for a minute, but yeah. Do you have any questions? Well,
Just a, if we sent additional information, would that information also go out to the members who are getting this recording?
Yes, I can include, I'm including everything in a package. I've been trying to do it that way to make it easy. I don't like for people to have to go track things down. So I just include it all in one email. So yes, so if you have anything that you would like to forward, go ahead and send it so that we can make sure that it's considered. All right. So other than that, again, thank you for coming. Glad we had the chance to talk to all three of you. And I'm sorry that Mr. Cromartie was not able to get back on, but again, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. And friends, if you could stay on, we'll say goodbye to you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
All right. Great. So now it's just us four. All right.
Yeah, but only for a few minutes, Sheila.